Welcome to the fourth episode of the Holler podcast by Searchability. After long anticipation, we are back. Demand for the podcast has been absolutely enormous since we last aired. I think at least 4 different people have asked when we're going to be returning, and here we are, back in this very room. I think it's fair to say that a lot's changed since we recorded the last pod. Both myself and Soph helps run the pod with Leah. I've become parents, and very proud ones at that. Speaking for myself personally, the pod had to take a little bit of a back step, and the baby had to take precedence for a short period of time, but we're definitely back stronger. I haven't stole that off the Peter Cross podcast. Sorry, Pete. Filling a few blanks, on August the 6th this year, my partner Gabby gave birth to our beautiful baby daughter, Sienna, who for the last 12 weeks has been an absolute dream. I can't really believe her luck, if I'm honest with you. She sleeps, she feeds, she's developing a lovely little personality. I think we've been pretty lucky, to be fair. It's been a very humbling experience, but one that I've very much enjoyed. So long may it continue. Okay, so on to the pod. Today, we are joined by Mike Cullen. Afternoon, Mike.
Afternoon, Ollie.
How are you, mate? You okay?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, Leah, press the break and soundbite. Oh, we don't have one. Okay, brilliant. Must have blew the budget on the podcast space. Breaking news: Mike is joining us on our first client-specific podcast, and seeing how this goes, it could potentially also be the last. Mike's the leading recruitment. I'm just going to read this out actually, Mike, because it's quite a mouthful. You are the leading recruitment and talent manager for, in inverted commas, automotive retail tech giant iVendi. Of course, we all know who iVendi are. Huge players in your specific market, mate. iVendi are based in both Cullen Bay
and the Northwest, really, as well.
And the Northwest.
We'll come on to ways of working and stuff, I'm sure, but yeah.
Nice, quite the eclectic mix. And Mike has worked both agency and in-house when it comes to recruitment. So in theory, you should be very well placed to tell us the trials and tribulations of both sides of the market and the points in which both sides of that market can come in. Full transparency for the listeners out there, Mike and I do actually go way back. It did help get him on board, although I think you've done one of these sorts of things before, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated. For those watching on YouTube, Mike did have hair when I first met him, albeit not that much.
I don't know if that says more about me or you.
Well, yeah, probably more about me, mate. Probably more about me. But I actually had the privilege of joining Mike last year on his wedding day in Portugal. He's punching. As well as his stag do in Lisbon, which was probably a bigger eye-opener than becoming a father. It was a good night though. Mike and I go way back, as I've said, and for those again watching on YouTube, albeit despite his strong masculine appearance, probably looks more like a rugby player. He's actually a half decent footballer, thus inheriting the name Big Nimble, as he's commonly known. Right then, Mike. Not enough about what we're going to do today. We would like to obviously go over a bit more information about yourself, how you've ended up being where you are today. Obviously talk about iVendi in detail and give you the chance to plug those guys. But we like to start things off a little bit more lighthearted than that. We have a Break the Ice segment of the pod that we do each month called The Good, The Bad and The Awkward. I did give you a little bit of a heads up on this, so I'm sure you've got a lot of stories that you could potentially share. Well, some you probably can't, to be fair. But what we asked you to, hopefully share as a story that covers both good, bad, and the awkward. But before we do that, I'm going to start with an awkward question. Why wasn't I best man at your wedding?
Joe's more reliable.
Yeah, well, I can't deny it.
Too popular.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, mate. So go on. Let's hear a story from you then, mate, to kick us off.
Yeah, I have had a little bit of a think about this one. There's a couple that we can talk about in the pub maybe later. But I think it's definitely an awkward one.
Excellent.
And kind of making that transition from agency into in-house was pretty daunting anyway. It's my first kind of step into the internal world. Want to make a really, really good impression. Still learning about the business, still obviously, you know, finding out kind of ways of working, all that kind of stuff.
Is this at iVendi?
This is at iVendi, yeah. So it's probably about 2 months in, so still kind of a relative newbie. And
not being yourself then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, basically, yeah. I was a bit smarter then, and still had hair. So, but yeah, so basically, it was about 2 months in. I was on the phone to a candidate, and I'd just seen the whole office move from one side to the other, and everyone was looking out the window. So I was like, odd, but I'm trying to, you know, talk about iVendi and what we're doing, and obviously process what the candidate's talking to me about. And then I looked outside in the car park, and I could tell that something was off. But I couldn't really put my finger on it. But everyone's like looking over at me, and I'm like, what's going on here? But I was trying to process it as I was talking and be professional, all that kind of stuff. And then it was only when I'd got off the call that I'd actually then realised that my handbrake had failed and had rolled back and smashed into the VP of Sales brand new Beamer.
Wow, so, impressive.
Yeah, you know me, I don't buy very expensive cars myself, so it wasn't really much of an issue for me. I think it probably fixed a few things. But actually, yeah, he wasn't best pleased. He took it really, really well, to be fair, but I think it was probably because I was so new. But so that was an awkward one, when obviously working with insurance and all that kind of stuff to get his lovely new Beamer fixed, because my Ford Focus just rolled into the back of it.
Brilliant. That is a very, very awkward story. It's bad and awkward.
It's not good.
Any good come from it at all?
No. I'd love to say, well, probably got on better with the VP of Sales because we had to exchange so many details afterwards. But other than that, no good come from that.
But you're still there.
Yeah.
Every cloud. Exactly, and he's forgiven you.
And to be fair, well, the good thing was, I suppose, one good thing in our winter conference that we had over in Lisbon later on in that year, we did kind of a spoof award ceremony, more of a comical, funny thing. So I got the Did I Put My Handbrake On award, which I've got on my mantelpiece.
Proud of place.
Next to all of my other awards that I don't own. So that was probably the good part of that story. Really.
Well, congratulations.
I think. I paid it off now, so it's fine.
Oh, happy days. Been underpaid for the last 18 months, basically. But we've got there in the end.
Exactly.
Awesome. That cracking story. You're full of them. All right, mate. So let's, without going into too much detail, because I know we've got a lot to get through, let's have a quick run through your time in recruitment, I guess. Now, the transition from agency to where you are now.
Yeah. So it all started in year 10. I went to the careers office and said, I would love to be a recruitment consultant. No, I'm not joking.
No, said really nobody ever.
No one did that. No one does that. So yeah, it kind of fell into it like a lot of people. I think my story went into the Army Reserves. I was the worst mechanic in the British Army. I think even they'll still tell you that now. I think I still hold that title. Should not be working on cars, as you've obviously heard from the handbrake. So that's probably not.
You did actually help me change a tyre once, if I remember correctly.
I did actually.
You're better than me.
That is all I can do. Yeah, pretty much. And win the wipers.
Well, that probably says more about me again than it does you.
So I think So I was. I did a stint in the Army recruitment team. I was a kind of a full-time reservist on year-long kind of contracts that kept renewing. And then, so kind of found a little bit of a call in there. I was due to go and do something completely different in the security space, and then got contacted by a chap who was running like an ex-forces recruitment company, transitioning them into recruitment, so like rec-to-rec model with an academy and stuff sitting in between. So I was doing that for about a year or so, and really wanted to kind of seen the way things were going from a digital perspective and stuff like that. So really kind of wanted to move into really kind of finding out more about roles. I felt like it was very recruitment focused by the nature of it, really. So kind of wanted to broaden my horizons with that. So went into kind of the digital recruitment space, really enjoyed my time doing that. And then kind of wanted to scratch the itch and see kind of on the flip side, what's that kind of full process look like for candidates, really? Because obviously you get a really good snapshot right at the start, kind of trying to develop teams and make them better and seeing them develop and grow and stuff like that was probably an area that I wanted to explore further, which is kind of my reason for going in-house, really, at iVendi. So I haven't looked back since. Okay,
cool. And how long have you been in recruitment in total?
Probably about 8 years or so.
It's a decent stint, isn't it? It is a decent stint. Okay, well, that obviously, you've obviously seen both sides of the market, so to speak, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later, and the trials and tribulations, the good and the bad, where you particularly enjoyed agency versus what you now really enjoy in-house, and maybe even talk about the point in which people in your position actually introduce agencies like Searchability, for example. But like I say, we'll touch on that later.
Yeah.
That does lead us nicely onto iVendi then. Obviously, that's why you're here today. We know all about you guys. Again, full transparency, we do work with iVendi at Searchability. We're one of your preferred suppliers, which we really appreciate. A massive company. But yeah, I'd be keen to just for the listeners out there, just to get a brief understanding of what iVendi actually do before we maybe talk about how you guys manage your interview process, etc.
Yeah.
So quick brief overview on iVendi and what you guys are all about.
Yeah. So I think the purpose and why we were kind of set up was always to make the buying process easier. So make buying easier is the purpose of the business. And we started off way back when we were kind of a handful of people. Rich and James both kind of set up the business. Started off more in the car finance calculator space. But now we've kind of grown it to kind of an end-to-end, what we call vehicle retailing solution. So it's a kind of a SaaS-based platform that dealers could and should plug into their kind of internal sales processes within their kind of retail space. So you can use it as part of when you're sitting down and having a nice coffee and talking about different vehicles and stuff like that. But also it allows consumers to do more online, and I think that's been really relevant and in trend over kind of since COVID, really. But that was always the trajectory that the business was going on, and that the ambition is on a global scale, and we've kind of started to internationalise first off in Germany, and there's other countries that we're looking at the minute. So it's really taking that kind of vehicle retailing solution international. And starting off with Europe and then kind of looking at the field from there, really. So just makes the car buying process from research right through to decision and payout. It just simplifies that whole process for everyone involved, and that's obviously end consumers, car retailers, media companies, portals, and lenders. So that could be brokers or banks, effectively.
Okay, cool. And it's not an area of the. What's the right expression? It's not something that I'm massively clued upon, but I've obviously seen iVendi go from strength to strength. I know you guys have had a exponential period of growth in the past sort of couple of years, and it's been really impressive. So much so that I know you historically were just based in North Wales, in Cullen Bay. Is that right?
Yeah. So when they very, very first started out, they were based in kind of Abergele in North Wales, which then kind of grew out into Abergele, but also we had an office over in Salford Keys area, because the ambitions of the company would be really, really difficult to scale a tech team just in North Wales. Obviously, we're quite limited there, really. So, decided to go into that market, and now we are kind of at the point where we've still got our HQ, which is now based in Colwyn Bay, just opposite Areas Park for anyone who's North Wales based. And then we've got kind of a remote first kind of product and tech team, really. And they meet up once a month, which is kind of all expenses paid over in Manchester. And then there's budget for teams to be able to meet up kind of in between that then for any kind of team days and stuff. So there's one of the teams who are on it in it, like a team day now at the minute. So still see a lot of value in that collaboration piece. And I think it's still quite difficult to kind of articulate that in a really succinct way, because remote means different things to different people. And we're saying remote first, which for some could be once a week or wherever that may look like. So that's kind of where we're at now with it, really, which gives us really good exposure to lots of different candidates.
Yeah,
really.
so it allows you to cast the net pretty wide, albeit culture is still a huge part of what you guys are trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those collaborative sessions and kind of socials and meetups and all that kind of stuff, I think that's what really kind of brings the team together over and above doing a good job in work effectively. So as I say, as a business, we still kind of value that. And I think that is it doesn't fit everyone, but I think the vast majority of people that kind of really resonates with them. So I think we've got a really good balance of that so far.
Cool, love it. You speak. You're clearly enjoying yourself there. You speak quite proudly about the journey you've been on, and you sell the organisation really well. So class, mate, love it. Okay, right. So you obviously your main task, I'm imagining, as recruitment and talent manager, is to obviously put bums on seats to a certain degree. I know you're tech specific, and it's no easy feat by any stretch. But let's talk recruitment process firstly at iVendi. especially since the pandemic, the playing field's very much been leveled out for so many reasons. Yeah. We obviously saw a huge boom this year. It's certainly been our busiest year in recruiting by quite some distance. We broke records, etc., etc. But the demand's just been so high. Now, you talked about the culture being very important to iVendi. You've talked about being remote first in inverted commas. We know it's all cool buzzwords that I know candidates out there will want to hear. But the process that clients utilize, I guess, can differ pretty widely, I think it's fair to say. So firstly, what was your recruitment process? Has it changed since the pandemic and going remote first? And where are you guys at now?
Yeah, so I suppose pre-pandemic, and because we had that space over in kind of Salford Keys and stuff, it was a bit more face-to-face. And because they were generally coming into an office, we always had kind of flexible working anyway, but typically you'd be in the office kind of 2 or 3 days a week anyway, so it's nice to come and see the kind of environment that you're going to be traveling to more regularly. Yeah. So I think that face to face was a big part of it there. I think the way it's changed, obviously a lot of it's gone, and especially on the product and tech side, kind of remote interviews. Yeah. And yeah, I think we've just had to kind of maybe change the questions and be a bit more thoughtful with how we interview, really, to make sure that we are getting the right kind of people there, because it's still very different when you're speaking to someone in a spare bedroom or wherever it may be, rather than actually kind of face to face, really. So actually, yeah, I think it's definitely changed it up. We still keep quite a light process, and yeah, I think that again that really works for us. I think just having kind of a few people who can interview quite strongly and understand what we're trying to achieve really helps with that. So yeah, just keep it nice and light. 2-stage interview process. One's a bit more about ways of working. Some of the, I suppose, more kind of fluffy stuff, and the working with teams and that kind of stuff, and aspirations and things. And then the second one will introduce some more technical people to give us a bit of a walkthrough of some example code, or talk us through the kind of scenarios, and kind of have it a lot more technical focused, really, to make sure obviously that the right kind of skills and abilities are there, really.
Okay, cool. And do you guys integrate any sort of tech test, paired programming exercise as part of that process?
Historically, no. But I think it is something that we are up for kind of looking at and trialing. Yeah. It's a fine balance to try and get candidates that are in high demand to want to do your stuff. So I think one way that we might kind of get around that, and that we've started looking to implement, is if they've got any example bits of code, obviously that's not covered by NDAs or anything like that, nothing that's kind of too contentious, or if they've got another tech test that they want to kind of walk us through or something like that, just to give us some kind of eyes on, really. We might change that in the future, to be fair, but we try and keep it as light as we can whilst maintaining kind of a decent standard for candidates, really. Okay, cool. All sounds very workable, and without getting too deep into this, how's it going? Good, I think so. Yeah, so we brought on 36 people this year, nice. Kind of so far, and that's a mix of kind of product and tech, remote first candidates, and candidates over in HQ, and new starters there. But yeah, I think probably we've kind of got all of the people that we wanted to, and that we kind of planned to. I think the main thing was, maybe some time for scales were pushed back, really. So we probably didn't find them exactly when we wanted them, but very happens in recruitment anyway, across that number of roles. So I think, we've just had to kind of understand a little bit about the market and how it is, but we've not necessarily kind of knee-jerk kind of, and totally changed our stance on it. I think we've kind of stayed true to what we are, and exactly, and just kind of kept a fairly consistent process throughout, really. All right, happy days. No, it all sounds like it's going. I mean, you're not going to sit here and say it's going terribly for obvious reasons, but it sounds like it's working really well for you guys, and you reacted to those changes in the market, which is always a good sign. Just very quickly touch on the fact that obviously iVendi derived from North Wales. Was the Manchester move pretty much purely just to attract a higher caliber of tech candidate, or was there more than just that? So I think, what happened was there was kind of like a bit of a, the lease was due up during kind of COVID. Yeah. So it was when everything, when you went out for your second walk, and you thought that, someone was going to, I'm going to tell you, I obviously never did, but, I've seen a couple of neighbours do it. So, obviously phone the 111 number. But so I think for us that was a kind of a strange time for us, and because we always worked flexibly before that anyway, it was literally just a case of people taking the MacBooks or Windows machines, a monitor and anything else, and just kind of going home, and they were well set up for that anyway, to be fair. So I think we haven't really seen a mass rush back to the office necessarily. I think people have been quite receptive to it, and I think we haven't seen any kind of major change from a delivery point of view either, really. So there's no point in kind of forcing people back to the office for no apparent reason. But it was just a situational thing, I think, and I think we were quite lucky really, because obviously a lot of people were paying for really nice space and kind of bigger space that they wanted to meet some growth plans and stuff like that. But actually, it wasn't really getting used, was it? So
no.
So it was just a timing thing, and it kind of works for us.
Happy days. Okay, cool. So I've got loads of questions for you about the difference between agency and in-house, etc. But we'll touch on that shortly. Let's just focus on the market this year for now. We've talked about a lot of the changes that we've had to adapt to during that period of time, both in-house and agency. And this year, I know I've touched on this on quite a few of the pods. This year's been a little bit crazy. It's been manic. Salaries have increased. There's obviously a huge push towards remote work during the pandemic. And from our perspective, it sounds like you guys are managing that pretty well. But from our perspective, we are starting to see a lot of our clients now at least bring it back more towards that hybrid model. When if you've got that flexibility to work still largely remote, I'm sure that works to your advantage. But iVendi they are a big player in the market, but once that level playing field was leveled out, you're almost in competition with, well, I guess everyone. There's some of the biggest tech giants in the world. Now, you've talked about how you've amended your interview process, which is working for you. You've got that hybrid model, which is working for you. You've got Manchester and Cullen Bay, which gives you alternative solutions. But what have you guys? I guess what sets you apart? What separates iVendi? I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but why would a candidate? Chance to plug iVendi, I guess. Why would a candidate choose an iVendi over anybody else, I guess? What do you guys do slightly differently?
Yeah, I suppose the business kind of purpose and how the business is run is a big part of it, I think. And we still are in this kind of space where we've got good things from a startup, kind of the startup world, and some of the kind of agility and stuff like that. And we're taking on some of the good things from more enterprise level organisations. So I think there's that kind of unique mix, and that's why I really like working about iVendi, is about being able to make an impact, because you're not kind of a cog in a wheel and employee number 5,000 and all that kind of stuff.
Get your hands dirty and stuck into projects and have a say on the way those projects are led.
Definitely, yeah. But also you've got the backing and support, so you're not like going through rounds of funding that are really you're unsure about if you're going to get VC or PE money and all that kind of stuff. So I think that having that kind of stability and security of what you would get in a larger, more kind of enterprise organisation. So I think that balance of between the two really kind of attracts candidates. I think the ability to make an impact is one for sure. We also do kind of different things, like we've invested a lot in our kind of leadership and management program, understanding that engineers, but also any other discipline really. A lot of people are promoted because they're really good at what they do, but actually they're looking at that kind of leadership and management skill set can be quite a different thing, and we kind of recognise that and put a lot of time and investment into that really. So I think that kind of helps, especially for the more senior roles and the people that we've been speaking to in kind of lead senior roles and stuff like that. That's something that they've not necessarily seen anywhere, and I think that's kind of the people focus that the business has got really. So that's kind of another kind of initiative really that probably kind of sets us apart ultimately. And then elements of growth as well, and internationalization and interest in kind of tech challenges and tech problems, I think is a key one. So I think just a real mix of all that kind of stuff. There's probably not one defining element of it. It's a just
very aware of the market and what's going on around you ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Cool. So did you? Did you find that? I know we found it from an agency perspective. You know, there did become a point, and albeit it certainly simmered down again now. There was a point where it's almost like whoever's got the most money wins. You know, we had clients of ours throwing up ridiculous fees, and they were offering us higher percentages, which doesn't happen very often, as we all know.
Yeah.
And it did become a fastest finger first game almost to a point. Everyone was desperate for candidates, such was the skill shortage, and we're paying through the roof for these candidates. So did you guys find that A, you had to pay more to secure good, strong talent than you did before? And B, did you lose a lot of people because of the melee that was going around you?
Yeah, so I suppose to split the questions up really, I think that obviously there were people who were, looking at their personal circumstances and, maybe kind of wanted that, what may be an inflated salary, but if they can get it, then great. But yes, but not as many as you think for the kind of reasons that I mentioned before. Really, I think we've got a really compelling proposition, and it's kind of the people kind of make it, and some of the people who left were still like, this is the best place to ever work.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously the financials kind of do play a part in that. In answer to your question about we wanted to make sure that we were competitive.
Yeah.
That we weren't totally off the mark with where the market was at, but actually we didn't really kind of ramp our salaries up and stuff like that, thinking that it's not really fair to current staff and stuff like that, just to pay a premium given market expectations and stuff at the time. So actually, and I think going back to some of the roles took longer to fill, it was because actually we were still quite pragmatic with it. We understood our kind of value proposition, what we were looking for. If people were interested in that kind of making an impact, growing, expansion, internationalization, they wanted to do really, really good work, then that's what we would kind of pitch it on over than salary, because you get very rarely you're going to be the absolute kind of top payer, and then you've got the dynamic of agencies, you've got the dynamic of London markets coming over, you've got the US markets and other companies going full remote. So to try and compete on a purely financial level is really, really tough.
Nigh on impossible. There's always someone out there willing to pay more, isn't there?
Exactly, yeah. So I think we took the view that, as long we'll pay people kind of fairly for what they do, we'll make sure that they've got a solid and fair benefits package. We'll make sure that the work is interesting, exciting work to be able to do. And that's kind of, that was our take on it really. But it did have an impact on how, when we brought people in rather than could we bring people in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, despite the movements in the market, ultimately you guys wanted people who absolutely wanted to work for you and not just someone who's after a little bit more money, in short.
Yeah, exactly that.
No, happy days. That all makes sense. Okay, cool. So there's so much that we can touch on here, but I know you guys also used our scalability model for a little bit because you were looking to expand quite quickly. Scalability is our subscription model for those that are interested. It just means that we commit to a number, so to speak. And I guess where I'm trying to go with this is you were looking to. The only reason that you entertained that idea was because you're looking to grow quite quickly at speed.
Yeah,
that model was obviously something that you guys considered for a period of time. Yeah. How were the results of that? Not necessarily from a searchability perspective, but did you manage to get the right amount of bums on seats? And are you now at a place where you guys are pretty happy and wrapping things up to the new year, or what's the current situation?
Yeah, so I think we. Just to obviously reiterate from before, we definitely, I feel like we've got the right people in the right places, so, and that's definitely helped. And a big part of that project was really, really good to get eyes on what our kind of employee value proposition was, because I think we each articulated it similarly but in different ways. So I think really getting that external validation of here's what people here's what your employees are talking about, here's what they love doing, and here's the common themes and stuff that run through, was really, really valuable for us to understand, where is our kind of line in the sand, and, kind of backing ourselves to go up against other big players who are, getting it tied into the salary element and stuff like that, really, to be fair. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think we definitely have got the right people in there, and I think it's key, when you are kind of working with partners and stuff like that, to give that kind of time, and, kind of Rich got involved in that, who's our kind of COO and co-founder, and really kind of having a bit more weight behind it. The business has to be on board with it, not just me, or not just the talent acquisition internal recruitment team. So I think having that business buy-in really helps, and that's definitely what we've got at iVendi.
Cool. Okay. And for just quickly for prospective candidates that could be listening, in theory, what are the growth plans for 2023?
Yeah, so we're still kind of firming them up, to be honest with you. We're still kind of doing some kind of contingency plans and stuff. There's nothing necessarily set in stone, but I would say kind of watch this space. There's lots of conversations happening that could really, really ramp up our kind of growth trajectory to make sure that we can deliver on, conversations that we're having with companies, both in the UK, but also internationally. So yeah, there's nothing firmed up as of yet, but those kind of conversations are happening at the minute, really.
Exciting time. Watch this space. I know we ended up just touching on this very, very quickly in the car, and I don't know how much you can go into this or how invasive I want to be, but obviously cost of living crisis, that the whole world is talking about it. Have you guys considered what's around the corner and how that's going to impact your existing staff?
Yeah, so I think, again, kind of conversations are ongoing, so there's nothing kind of firmed up. It's a lot of companies are going to kind of struggle to find that kind of element of fairness, but also kind of remunerate people, and cost of living crisis. Not everyone's going to be able to pay 10% increases to everyone and all that kind of stuff. So for a lot of people, it's going to feel like, and most companies probably won't be able to. Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, it's going to be.
Of course, we're in the same boat.
Of course, in the same boat. So I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a hard pill to swallow, because it's probably one of the few times that salary increases probably won't match inflation. Certainly in our kind of working career lifetime, obviously. So I think it's tough for everyone. But yeah, we're looking at kind of the best way to kind of go about that and navigate that at the minute. And there's again a couple of different options. I know I'm sounding a bit like a politician or something like that, but
it's all relevant, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's genuinely it's never been more at the forefront of people's conversation and stuff like that. You hear about it as you walking through town and stuff like that. It's at the forefront of what people are talking about, and it's constantly in the news and in the media and stuff like that. It's just about kind of navigating, what can the company do, and then kind of working in the confines of that to work out an element of kind of fairness, really. Yeah. And on kind of both sides, it's being able to recognise and reward those who are doing really well, but make sure that there's an element of fairness. And loads of companies have kind of marked it up differently. You've got people who've kind of done one-off bonuses and stuff like that. There's kind of different percentage levels of increase. There's some have weighted it more towards kind of lower salaried roles and stuff like that. And I don't think there's probably not a one-size-fits-all approach to it.
Absolutely not, no.
So it's just finding out, what does that look like across our business? And we've got, kind of salespeople, marketing, people in kind of support and finance, but also software engineers and stuff like that. So we've got a real wide mix and demographic of people. So
makes sense. And I also, I guess that this is where the remote first proposition actually helps you guys as well. You saves travel expenses, etc. as well as times get a little bit harder. Now, okay, cool. That's a really good overview, Mike. Very insightful. You speak very proudly of iVendi, and the guys over at iVendi have obviously done a lot to look after their staff. So long may it continue. Okay, on to the a bit more juicy stuff. I won't keep you long here, but I'm always keen to hear people's views on agency, which is the only side I know versus internal. In my humble opinion, there's absolutely room for both, of course. There used to be an age-old argument that maybe internal was easier, perhaps, which I imagine you're going to tell me isn't the case. But I'll just be keen to understand your honest thoughts. Obviously, you love iVendi, that goes without saying for anyone who's listening. But Mike, out to the floor. Give us a little bit of an overview of the trials and tribulations of agency versus in-house, and where you see the peaks and troughs. Yeah.
So I think, in answer to your question, if you would have asked me 4 years ago, I'd have said 100% agency is harder.
Now you're 47, you change your mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think
I went to Mike's 30th birthday not long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't 17 years ago. No, so I think I have kind of converted, obviously, slightly, but I see there's difficulties on both sides and challenges on both sides, but I think they are quite different challenges. I think the difficulty on agency side is really to understand and know and get under the skin of all of the clients that you're working with, being able to pitch them in the right way and understand it. You know, it's difficult to do across a business, never mind across one business. I mean, internally, never mind, you know, if you're working with a top 5 or 10 clients, and really kind of pitch that the right way. So I think that's really, you know, in context switching between all of the different types of companies and types of people and, you know, types of skill sets and things that you're looking for. That's super tough. And obviously there's a financial figure on your head that kind of looms over you, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, depending on the month. So that's definitely tough with it, being really, really target driven. I think, you know, on the flip side, you know, some of the kind of almost the good bits or the slightly easier bits is it's only a short snapshot of that candidate journey and that candidate life cycle.
Yes.
So if you're looking at, you know, plucking a figure out there, it might only be, you know, 10 or 15%, you know, really just the start of that journey, all the other stuff that comes with it. You know, I kind of, you know, making sure that the work is meaningful, that they're doing they're working on the right thing, working with the teams to make sure that they've got the right people in the right places, and looking at, you know, any kind of restructures that, you know, are being spoken about, and making sure that they're kind of, you know, happy and productive in their work and stuff like that. That's a huge, huge part of it. So I think, to answer your question, there's different challenges in different areas. I genuinely wouldn't say one is easier than the other. I think if you're quite sales led and sales driven and that kind of stuff, it might be more difficult in an internal perspective, because things are a bit, I suppose, less defined and less kind of like, because you don't necessarily have a financial figure and stuff, and you've got to work things out and plan a bit more into the future. So it's probably slightly more proactive rather than a reactive role, depending on what's kind of happening at that time. But yeah, I think both are tough, and both have been tough, but actually never better at the same time, because it is, you know, obviously unemployment's at an all-time kind of low and stuff like that. So, you know, actually there's an abundance of opportunity there, and that kind of, I think a lot of companies have switched from kind of, you know, doing the kind of the business development emails, trying to get all the big names and the clients on board and tendering for PSLs and all that kind of stuff, really, and just really focused on candidates, because I think candidates has been key throughout the past kind of 12, certainly 18 months, if not a bit longer, really. So I think for those who've managed the candidates and managed to get hold of them and come up with innovative and interesting ways to be able to do that, or had a really compelling story to talk about, then they've won. And I would assume that agencies, if they know the clients really well, they can pitch that in such a way where they can hopefully attract the right kind of people, and that's kind of what we see.
No, absolutely. That really makes sense. I think, you know, historically the age-old easy argument for people who are in my position was, well, you know, you'd earn more money doing agency. Obviously, there's a big caveat to that. You have to get it right. Is the reality. But I really feel like in recent years, there's been a huge demand and an interest for really strong in-house recruiters. I think, you know, salaries have actually gone through the roof on in-house recruitment, as well as they have for developers, DevOps engineers, etc. I think that role, not that it shouldn't have been before, but it's now a really, really respected role, where, you know, somebody like yourself who has previous experience, you know, not only will you go to market and utilize your previous experience in recruitment, but then you'll also deal with the recruiters on the other side, and you get it because you've been there. You understand that. You know, we've all had clients in the past that have been difficult, and we used to have frustrations because maybe they didn't necessarily understand why we were calling. Well, part of the reason being that we had to. Yeah. But I think having been through that yourself previously, you're so. No, you just understand. You know, you get it. You understand both sides of the fence, and I think that'll put you in really good stead. Yeah, no, definitely.
I think when you look at a lot of kind of like business books and things that are published about companies, there's so much out there that is about kind of culture. It generally boils down, I think Stephen Bartlett was talking about it as well, you know, around, you know, getting really good people into the business is kind of one of the biggest kind of definitions for success, really. Do you know what I mean? You can have a really compelling business proposition, you could be really interesting, you could be really, you can have competitive advantage and stuff like that, but if you haven't got the people to deliver on that, that's a key part of it. And that's why CEOs, MDs, senior leaders within the business have, I think, now really kind of shifted the focus on, maybe kind of, hiring better into those roles to then have a knock-on impact into the wider teams, really, because that's what it's all about. So I think that's probably driven it somewhat. You've got the kind of lots of cultural books about Netflix and Google and all that kind of stuff, and the time and focus and emphasis that they have on the talent acquisition process, bringing in the right people and all that kind of stuff. You just probably never used to see it back in the day. It was very much a put an advert out and let's see who applies.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That's so insightful. So thank you for that. For any recruiters that might be listening out there, obviously you're a client. We all hear, countless times over the years, we don't use recruiters. 99 times out of 100, it's not true, and it's just a fob off, of course. But what I'd be keen to understand, and maybe some of the listeners may be keen to understand, in your role, at what point do you stop looking yourself and decide, right, now is the time to distribute these roles to agencies?
Yeah, so I think it's probably when you kind of exhausted any of the kind of the ways that I've got really internally or a talent acquisition team have got. I think I'm quite lucky in the way of there's not mega strict budgets. Obviously, we want to keep an eye on them. We want to make sure that it's not kind of spiraling out of control necessarily, but we want to get a really, really good balance. But I think not having mega strict budgets really helps that. But yeah, it's effectively, even if I've got a short list of direct applicants and stuff, if we don't feel like we've got the right level and caliber and a couple of standout candidates, we'd absolutely still go to agencies, kind of following that process really, and just manage their expectations around there might be a slight delay or whatever that may kind of look like, really. So and for the notoriously hard to fill roles that we may have recruited for more often, where you kind of saturate your own channels and stuff like that, rely on obviously recruiters to go out to their networks really and get some extra eyes on it effectively.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the perception of the in-house recruiter from an agency perspective is actually that you guys are very, very busy. And I think obviously sometimes we feel that works to our advantage, because it won't be long until something else will crop up in Mike's day, which means he can't scour the job boards or LinkedIn, etc. How much of your day or week or month or whatever would you say is actually still going back out to market?
Yeah,
and
I suppose difficult to say from a direct perspective, but quite a lot of my time, I'd probably say 50-60% of my time has been focused on recruitment. Obviously trying to bring on 36 different people. Yeah, it's not a one interview, one candidate kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. So obviously there's all the the people that you see that's kind of sit behind that really. I'd say pretty much every role I would go out kind of direct for, and normally after about a week or two, we'd normally kind of have a good understanding on, are we seeing the right people?
The likelihood of that going.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's normally at the point where we kind of start to obviously speak to people such as yourselves really to, as I say, get extra eyes on.
All right, cool. No, very, very interesting. I loved it. It is good to hear, both sides of the story, so to speak. And it sounds like, to be fair, unlike some, I guess, you've really enjoyed both sides. Yeah, quite refreshing.
No, I think so. I think the certain elements of kind of camaraderie from the recruitment side, agency side, and stuff, and kind of the vast majority of people are in the same role and have the same problems and challenges and stuff like that. So you've kind of got that unification across the board. So I think that's definitely a part that you probably you don't necessarily get unless you're part of a massive function within a business of people who are doing the same stuff. So I think that definitely kind of helps. But yeah, I think having that full life cycle and exposure to teams developing, improving, all that kind of stuff, and seeing people progress through the business as well is a it's rewarding, key factor. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. No, that's brilliant, Mike. Thanks very much. Okay, right. So onto our next segment then. Again, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up on this, but we ask our guests to give us their 5 top tiers, like 5, 4, that sort of gig. Now with yourself, obviously you do internal, Mike. So what would be your 5 top tips for anyone either looking to get into internal recruitment or any internal recruiters out there on how best to manage their day, etc., etc. What advice would you give to those in your position?
Yeah.
How do you get the most out of your day?
I think, and this is the bit that I haven't prepped for.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think understanding the business and what the business needs, because I think everything that I do in my role has to meet with what the business is trying to achieve. So that kind of gives it purpose and meaning for whatever that kind of initiative or project or piece of work or piece of recruitment may well be. So I think that is a key one.
Yeah.
I think for people getting into it, don't join the army and be a mechanic if you fancy being a recruiter. That's
a very honest tip.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking from experience, that's probably my next tip.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's about, once you've understood the business needs and what you want, really kind of working with the people around you and getting kind of buy into what you're trying to achieve, because you do rely on other people. You can't do it all on your own. Yeah. So really kind of building up those relationships with key stakeholders that you're going to be working with, get a good relationship with the hiring managers, that kind of stuff. And then I don't even know if that is a third one, but we'll go on to the fourth one. I think is about learning to prioritize really well, which I kind of found difficult at the time when I first moved into it. I think you've got lots of clarity when you're an agency, because it's as soon as you get a role or you win a new client, you kind of you make a huge effort. You tear up trees to try and impress and stuff like that. Whereas when there's so many different widespread initiatives, it's so hard to pick from one to the other, because it's not just about recruitment, it's about so much else and all the other things that are going on. So I think really getting good with trying to prioritize what is important or what can wait. Yeah. Because everyone and different stakeholders throughout the business, everyone wants everything now. If you ask them, ASAP is the is
yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the the timescale that you're working to. It's either as soon as possible now or yesterday.
Nice and easy then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and so it's kind of that managing expectations, but kind of prioritization,
being realistic, I guess.
Yeah, I think and I think people understand that. You haven't. We're all human at the end of the day. We've only got so many hours in a day. But yeah, I think I probably went into it trying to please everyone and kind of probably not being as kind of effective as I could initially, and just saying yes to everything and yeah. And I think actually now pushing back and challenging in different areas, or just saying, when do you need that by? It's just such a simple thing. Again, you probably get the ASAP.
Challenging the status
or
quo.
Today. Yeah, definitely. And and sometimes, I am kind of, surprised when do you know what, actually we need it for this certain event, or we need something, there's some kind of time scale driving that. So understanding that so you can manage your own day, your own time, effectively, I think is a key part of it.
Cool. With the fifth top tip, I'm going to help you out more so because I'm keen to know. So from an internal perspective, what tools can you not live without? What is an absolute essential? When you've got a new role on, when you're looking to onboard quickly, etc. What tools would you be reliant upon, I guess, to make sure you got the job done?
So I think LinkedIn is still, and I think it's kind of off trend now because it's getting a bit more Facebooky, but I think that's probably still the most successful tool from a direct perspective.
And you have like Recruiter.
The Recruiter license and that kind of stuff, and setting up projects and kind of flags for people when they're open to work and stuff like that. So I think that's probably from a recruitment perspective is still the number one kind of tool that kind of I use as well. And then looking at on the flip side, making sure that we've got a HR kind of management platform that kind of automates a lot of stuff, and we don't have really, really kind of archaic manual processes, helps me out massively, to be fair. And I think that's a key thing with kind of speed of onboarding as well. So I think if we were looking at actual physical or software tools or wherever that may be, I'd say probably making sure that you've got a really slick, nice, automated people management system. Yeah. And probably LinkedIn will fade out, I would assume, anyway.
It's showing no signs based on how much they charge.
No, exactly. Yeah, they do not negotiate with anyone. To be fair,
absolutely
I was trying to
not.
negotiate one license. Didn't work out at all.
Pay more or even more. They're two options.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think they, because they are the number one professional platform and all that kind of stuff as well. I don't think, unless you're absolutely massive, that they kind of do negotiate with that. I don't know whether that will change. They've mentioned kind of layoffs and other bits, and obviously they're kind of trimming the fat and stuff like that. So I don't know if that'll play a factor into it, or if more people will start to come off it and go down other means. To be fair, we've trialed different kind of tech specific, kind of communities and stuff like that. Yeah. Probably haven't really settled on
Stack
one that is
absolutely your Slacks and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so we probably haven't nailed one really. So I think, as I say, LinkedIn is still justifying its non-negotiation on the fee at the minute, really. So,
and how about from a it's from a job board perspective? Are the job boards dying out when it comes to internal recruitment, or did you get a lot of adverts and?
Not loads, to be fair. I think it's probably better on the kind of HQ side and maybe some of the kind of less technical roles.
Yeah.
Because I think, software engineers, people who've got kind of technical disciplines and stuff like that, because they are in such high demand at the minute, they're getting peppered that much that they could probably just go back into the last 3 or 4 messages from yesterday.
Yeah.
Rather than take the time to do the CV and put it on a job board and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's, I think the job boards is probably going to have to do something about that. But, I'm assuming for, volume roles and, those kind of things, it might still really work well for, but it's just not the market that I operate in. So I think there is still value in them, but probably not as much.
Really. I think the realism is that most half decent techies these days tend to go to LinkedIn, don't they? That's just the reality. Okay, thank you, Mike, for your 5 top tips. Big, nimble. Right, okay, so moving on to the my final segment before we go on to your final segment, Mr. Cullen. Okay, so in this segment, the Director's Diaries, we like to, I like to share some of my own thoughts, I guess, ultimately. Now, we've cancelled this particular pod about 87 times. One because Leah was skiving ill. One because Danny, who lets us rent the podcast room, is never available at the butcher's or wherever we might be. But we managed to get it on for today at short notice. But on my last pod, or the last pod in this particular segment, I was very soon to become a father. Actually turned out to have the baby about 3 days later. And I did reach out to our listeners and ask for their advice on how to best prepare for life as a parent and a recruiter, how to balance that time, how to still perform at the same sort of levels, but still getting home and making sure you spend time with your children and your missus or your partner or your other half or whatever. So today I'm just gonna share some of that advice, some from recruiters at Searchability, some from clients, some who prefer to stay anonymous. So just bear with me. I'm gonna read out some of that advice for any, either current parents or future parents. So I'm going to start with Chris Hopley. By chance, he actually had a little boy called Joshua at a very similar time to Gab's giving birth to Sienna, and he's provided the following. You need to maximise the day, as making the late calls aren't fun with a crying baby on the other hand. Always have a backup outfit for any mishaps. Make sure you've got the LinkedIn Recruiter app, very relevant, on your mobile, which makes multitasking and winding and sourcing a lot easier. It really is multitasking.
You're winning there if you can do that.
I like this one, and I've got a bit of a story myself here to be told. So he says, having a newborn is a great icebreaker, as a lot of clients feel your pain. Now, straight talk, going on to good and bad and awkward, I do vividly remember trying to get into with a particular client 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't know why I did it. I had to lie for 2 or 3 years, right? I just remember how was your weekend? And my client at the time said something along the lines of, nightmare. The kids were causing havoc. And for some reason, I said, me too. To this day, I still do not know why I said it. You know, you talk, and I know, a bit old school, but you talk to mirror conversations and find a relatable subject, particularly when you're trying to get in somewhere. And yeah, for about 2.5 years, I had to pretend I had a child who quite simply didn't exist.
Full disclosure, by the way. Recruiters get a bad rep, and that probably won't help. But actually, Ollie's one of the nicest blokes in recruitment, to be fair. So I'm actually genuinely quite shocked at that.
I know. I'm still sorry.
You've probably just been a people pleaser.
But now I am a parent, so you know. It's
there we go. So
what comes around goes around. I guess. That's honestly brilliant. Okay, Hoppers also says take home. It's very thoughtful, actually. You know, Chris, don't you?
Insights, yeah.
Take home 3 or 4 topics from the day to discuss with your partner. They actually want to hear about the world outside.
Wow, he's Googled that, hasn't he?
He has.
He's definitely Googled that.
He's not doing that. I'm not having it.
No.
And now this one, I apologise because this is a first world problem. Hire a cleaner. Wow. Means you don't spend all your weekends cleaning. Somebody is doing well.
Someone's doing well. Yeah, exactly that. There's a cost of living crisis going on here.
I know, mental. No, cheers, Chris. That was really helpful. He will be listening. Dave Henderson, his kids are a little bit older. Dave looks after the contract support division at Searchability. His kids are 5 and 7, and I mean, he wrote an essay. I'm not going to lie. You ask Dave to help you out with something, and it goes on forever. So I'm going to try and shorten his version down. But as a quick overview, Dave said, one of the pluses of recruitment against other careers is the more you put in, the more you get out. Thanks, Dave. The negative is that when you have children, the same applies. And they're more important. So how do you balance that? I reckon my first boss would have sacked me for saying that, if I'm honest with you. But no, Dave talks about coffee. Obviously, coffee is the number one tool in his recruitment arsenal. It's not great for you, but neither is smoking and drinking, and loads of people do that. Fair. Yeah. His tip to the novices out there is don't drink strong coffee. Have loads of medium strength ones, but all day. It's
like an IV, like about a drip constantly.
And he quotes, "It's a marathon, not a sprint." In relation to coffee, wow, impressive. He also talks about maximising your weekends, saying no, which is something that I think Dave struggles with. But making sure you find the time to balance work and your kids at the weekend. And he said, ultimately, you can manage both things. Although they will clash at times, you don't have to choose one or the other. Make sure you utilise your time on both sides. If you build a career in recruitment, you can provide a good future for your children, but at the same time, they need you more than the money. Yeah, I like it. Philosopher. P.S. Once they start walking, it's game over for your spare time. Cheers, Dave. I look forward to that. And P.P.S. Once they are toddlers, you get it in the private bits, loads, minimum 1 to 2 times a day, which sounds rubbish.
It does sound rubbish. Yeah,
sounds rubbish. Anthony Burley, I'll just run through these quickly. Anthony Burley is a client of ours. He's the head of recruitment at Ripjaw. He says you need an employer who gives you flexibility to balance work life and home life, which is absolutely true. You need to work when the baby sleeps and have a supportive partner. You also need a committed team who you can rely on and delegate tasks to in the early days of fatherhood. So choose your team wisely.
Very thought. Yeah. I thought a lot of these would be kind of taking the piss a little bit. But
I think there's a couple in there. Yeah. There is one person, the final one, who I do know, but he's insisted he remains anonymous, who says, just don't have one. They're well annoying. Brilliant. Yeah. What thoughtful and kind advice. But you know what, all jokes aside, a lot of that advice has been very helpful. Like I said before, I have had it easy, but of course it certainly has its testing moments, and it does take some adaptation. So, ultimately, just try and find time for both. I think it's that straightforward. I've absolutely loved the last 12 to 13 weeks, and going home and spending time with Sienna has been great. I'm very fortunate that I only live a 10-minute walk away from my house, which means I can go home at lunchtime. I know a lot of parents don't have that same luxury, but that's been hugely advantageous. So, move closer to work. Is that good advice?
Maybe. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, cool. Right, let's thanks for everyone that also provided those insightful comments about parenthood. Really appreciated. Go on, Mike.
I was just going to say, so when I seen the Director's Diaries thing, I thought it'd be a really good insight to get to know you a little bit more. So I've come with some quick fire questions, and the We used to do, we have done this
Shit.
with sales roles, and for the listeners, Ollie has got no idea.
Oh, this is genuinely not prepared for.
Yeah,
I'm terrified.
So we used to do these, and we have done these with kind of sales roles. Really, we've changed the questions to make them a bit more relevant and stuff.
Okay,
but actually, it was just quick fire. First thing that kind of comes to your head with it, just to find out a bit more about you, really.
So I've got to say something without thinking. Ultimately.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So, you know, on Friends, when it's the kind of
Chloe, you've got the edit already, right? And this is something that iVendi integrate themselves, is it? Or
so it's something that we have done for sales roles, and it's basically just to really kind of as a bit of an icebreaker, especially for kind of sales roles, just to find out a bit more about people. It's not something that we do for tech roles, just for full disclosure.
Okay, cool.
But
Let's do it.
It's just something that's a bit of light-hearted fun, and I have changed the questions anyway, just to make them more relevant, if you like. Anyway, so. But yeah, so just to kick us off then, so first kind of thing that comes to your head, favourite drink?
Diet Coke.
Favourite holiday destination?
Barbados.
Favourite film?
Shawshank Redemption.
Morning or evening?
Evening.
Any regrets?
Loads.
Who did most admire?
Who do I most admire? Oh, it's changed a lot very recently. And until 2 weeks ago, I'd have said Cristiano Ronaldo, but now I think he's a knob.
Fair enough. Best or favourite quote?
Well, this is embarrassing, but I do have a tattoo, which is pathetic. But of course, it's the one that sticks in my mind because it's painted on my body. I no longer appreciate the quote, but it says, "Every passing minute is another chance to turn it all around."
Wow.
Which is very. I got it when I was finding myself in Thailand, about 21.
Well, that's fine. Then you've got some elephant pants on.
Yeah,
why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's off Vanilla Sky, embarrassingly. But you know what? As a young man, I did always like that quote. So yeah.
When you said that and then you said the word pathetic, I just thought you had pathetic tattooed on your back.
No, it's not quite that pathetic, but not far off.
Not a million miles away. Anyway, biggest misconception about you?
That I'm short. It is, right? This is true. That I'm 5'9" and a bit, right? 5'10" with these platform trainers on. And if you actually Google it, that is literally average height for a male in the UK.
I think you've Googled that far too often. And best book recommendation? Best
book. I'm not a massive reader. I do like my autobiographies though. I'm a big football fan as well. I particularly like Zlatan Ibrahimovic's. I've recently read Jimmy Carr's, which is absolutely brilliant. It's not just about being a comedian. There's a lot of life lessons in there as well. But yeah, I'd say some of my heroes, Roy Keane, David Beckham. I'm not going to pretend to be a I don't know.
Hobbit?
Yeah,
you read The Hobbit?
I have. You know what? I've watched The Hobbit. I mean, I used to joke that what's the point in reading the book if it's any good? They'll just make a film of it anyway. But I think having got a little bit more wise in my old age, that definitely isn't true. I do find some books quite inspiring, but you put me on the spot, so I'm going to go with Zlatan Ibrahimovic's autobiography.
Awesome. That is it. That is your
cool
10 quick fire questions.
I enjoyed it. I think. Or we'll listen back to it and I'll get Chloe to edit out anything that's no good. Okay, right. So back over to you, Michael. So final segment of the pod.
Yeah.
We call it the wrap-up record, where, well, we ask you to do exactly that. So you choose a song that may, I don't know, define a moment of your life. It may be relevant to you because of your organisation. I don't know, it could be for a million different reasons. I know I asked you to go and think about this, and at last count, you had about 47 options. So, over to you. What have you decided to go for to sign us out?
Yeah, could have been anything from gangster rap to acoustic, but I've gone with the automotive theme.
Okay, nice.
Tracy Chapman, Fast Car.
Absolute
classic
belter to hear us out. Okay, well, with that, here is Tracy Chapman, Fast Car. Thanks for listening.
You get a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove.